Hi there, and welcome to the HDFS Career Podcast. My name is Dr. Lori Bullock, and I'm an assistant professor at MSU in the Department of Human Development and Family Studies. I teach several courses in the department, and one of them is HDFS 270, which is a course that introduces students to our major and to the field of family science. Quite often, students who are new to our major are not sure of the kinds of career options they have with a degree in human development and family studies. Some students know exactly what they want to do after graduation, and some students aren't sure, and they can often feel sometimes overwhelmed. There are also students who are in this major but plan to pursue careers in healthcare after graduation. These are students who want to be physicians or physician's assistants or nurses or child life specialists or occupational therapists and so on, many of the healthcare fields. The purpose of this podcast is to bring on professionals from many areas that relate to HDFS. Each episode, I invite professionals from the community who have an HDFS background or a background that is similar to HDFS. I'm so excited to have you here today, and I hope the information in this episode will be helpful to you as you consider your career options. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Hello, HDFS students and fellow emerging professionals. I'm really excited for you to meet today's guest on the podcast. Her name is Mariah McNier-Shafer, and she is the Outreach Director at the Refugee Development Center in Lansing. And that is a really cool role that I want you to learn about. So I'm going to read a little bit about her bio so you get some background information before we meet her. So Mariah is part of the evolving and responsive Refugee Development Center team. As the outreach director, she spends the majority of her time collaborating with Greater Lansing community and other nonprofits in the hopes of uplifting and supporting the global community in her home city of Lansing. Additionally, she acts as a language instructor, home visit specialist, and community liaison. So she wears many hats within her role. Mariah began her professional career in hospitality management, where she gained valuable experience working as an event planner and sales representatives for small businesses and international companies, as well as government entities. After receiving her master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages, in 2010, she worked at MSU in the English Language Center, as well as at the Visiting International Professional Program and Lansing Community College. So she has several years of experience. And then to her great fortune, her relationship with the Refugee Development Center turned into a full-time position. She is currently grateful to help onboard new staff, as well as participating in educational opportunities to provide the best service possible to the families. She believes that a best led life includes a little mess, a little sweat, and a hopeful attitude. And she also believes in naps. I love that. Her best day is surrounded by loved ones, feet in the dirt or sand, and eyes on Lake Michigan. That is really cool. So Mariah, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I'm really excited for our students to learn from you.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here.
That's great. I'm so excited for them to learn about you. Can you tell us or explain a little bit about what an outreach director does?
Sure. When I started out as an outreach director here at the RDC, it was kind of a gradual change in position. So I, started taking over some meetings for our executive director, and then we started kind of collaborating on other, identifying other partners that we wanted to connect with. And so it evolved into a bigger position that now includes outreach and meetings and getting to know other agencies and what they're doing, connecting with people that we've been working with for years and years, like MSU. And then additionally, looking at our social media, how we're represented online, how accessible we are with that. And then most recently, volunteering as part of the outreach role. So it makes sense that, our volunteers and our interns are an extension of the RDC and everywhere that they go, and the stories that they tell. And so we've just created kind of a new segment to my role, which is exciting.
That's awesome. That is exciting. And I love how it has evolved over time, just like many organizations do that as they grow, evolve, and change, and the roles change.
Mhm.
So that's good. Now, in your bio, it talked about the many hats that you wear. Can you describe a little bit about what kinds of things you do when you do home visiting, as well as other staff that does home visiting? What kinds of things do they do?
Sure. Now we have a family engagement team, and our family engagement team does most of our home visits, but all of our staff are responsible for connecting with our students in whatever way that makes sense for them. So we have students that don't have cars, that don't have driver's license. We have students that are homebound. We have parents who are homebound because of their children. Or their loved ones that they're caring for. We have senior citizens. So we have a great need to do a lot of work with our families, and we really believe in meeting them where they're at. So when we first started as an organization in 2002, we didn't start out with home visiting. We started in as a drop-in center, and that's still a part of who we are today. It's actually a really big part of our program now. But we identified pretty early on that it's wonderful to have services at a location, but to bring some of those services to people really makes a big difference in the trust and relationship building. And so we started doing some home visiting and some case management. And then as we continued to do that, we saw how important it was. We had a relationship with the school district through a federal grant and a state grant that required that we do home visiting for families that had school-age children within 10 days of their arrival. So when people would come in from different countries, they would have a case manager from St. Vincent Refugee Services that would be working with them on doctor's appointments and identification and education. And then we would come in and provide additional support on school orientations, programming in the areas, and kind of recycling that, because we know that, we don't learn in a linear pattern anymore. We've realized that oftentimes learning is kind of a little step forward, a little step back. And so we wanted to make that accessible and attainable for people. And the other piece of it is that, when we go on a home visit, it's not like I just show up at the door for people and say, hi, welcome to Michigan, and I'm going to speak to you in English, as this white lady, and assume that we're going to just get along perfectly. We want to build some bridges in there. And so that means that we rely heavily on our friends in the community, our staff at the RDC that are from those communities and cultures to lead those conversations. And so for a long time, we had contractual employees that were working with us, meaning that they might go on a couple of home visits with us, but not work at our organization. But now we really have most of our languages represented and on staff. And so our staff members that are from those communities will go with other staff members who might not be from those communities and do some, early family literacy, maybe reading books, working with parents on early literacy. Maybe it's talking through medical issues, our connection with Medicaid. It could be doing some wraparound support from a youth mentoring program, where their teacher identified that a student was struggling with something, and we want to bring it back home to the parents. It could be, I think on Friday, I'm going to go give a test. So that's going to be, everybody's favorite thing to do. But we, we really value our home visits because it builds connections better than anything else we could do. Honestly, when we come into somebody's home and we see almost always you're going to gain like 10 pounds, because when we leave, they want hospitality is built into a lot of our cultures. And so when we go there, they want to show us the food, and they want us to, drink their coffee or their tea, and engage with their family. And oftentimes we've had to learn how to say as a staff, like, okay, how do we say no to staying for the family dinner? Because they're so excited to have guests. They want us to be there for as long as possible. But I really value the home visit program. That's something that I started out doing pretty early on. It has a lot of challenges. You really see, the conditions that people are living in. It could be beautiful and amazing, or it could be home repairs are needed and they're not aware. So it's just a really important role. And we collaborate with other agencies that do home visits as well. So, Ingham County Health Department has a maternal care. So oftentimes we kind of collaborate to provide the best care for these families. And it's just very important. It falls into outreach because it also, now that I'm not doing as many home visits, our families that are going to do the home visits might all be coming back and saying, we need X, Y, and Z. We're getting ready for the winter, and every home that we go to, the windows are single pane, it's going to be freezing. And so then I can go out and I can tell a community group, that's gathering supplies for us or whatnot, oh, we need this thing. Or we have a language that is, more prevalent right now. Like, for example, at the RDC, we're seeing a lot of folks from that are Haitian Creole speaking. And then we also see quite a few people coming in that are Kurdish, and they might be from Syria or Iraq. And so I know that we need more support in those communities. So I put that on my tally of connections to make. So it's a lot of collaboration, and that's kind of how we've evolved into where we are now.
So that, for one thing, it makes me feel like, or it sounds like it really just helps that transition when families first come into the area. And then especially that connection with schools, that hopefully that goes smoother, and more positive relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. We have to enroll students. We enroll all the students that come in to go to Lansing School District. So that's something that RDC does now, which means meeting people at their homes and taking them to the welcome center that the school district has. But it also means teaching, especially the high school students that don't get a bus, a Dean bus anymore, they ride CATA. We teach them how to ride the bus. So we have a whole team of people that will go out, meet the parents, make sure they feel safe, show them where the bus stop is, get on the bus, ride the bus, learn all. I mean, as students of MSU, you all learn how to ride the buses, and it can be overwhelming and challenging. And so we kind of help them get to the schools and then get home again too. And that, when you show families that are, we're willing to go, the community of Lansing is willing to go that far to make sure they feel welcomed and they know how to get their children safely to school, it makes a world of difference.
So some of the things you were describing, like, was the home visiting, but was also the collaboration with the schools and then the other organizations that help provide you with resources for the families and things. So is that connected to the community liaison aspect of your role also? Or how does that fit in?
So, those connections were established years ago, and it really takes constant monitoring by all people in our programs. So, we have some grant requirements. St. Vincent Refugee Services is the resettlement agency, and then they're required to give us notification when families come that have school-age children. And now that's just expanded to all children this last year. And so they send us over notifications, and we have a limited time, but we're talking to their case managers there because they're orchestrating a ton of visits, Social Security and immunizations and all of those kinds of things. And so, when an example of the partnership, when the Afghans came in a couple of years ago, and it was an emergency response, by our country to assist people. And we had a lot of people arriving at the same time. St. Vincent Refugee Services was doing a tremendous amount of work to find housing and, feed people and take care of them. And they asked us if we could help with the school enrollment because they trusted that we would do a good job and that we would be a good partner. And so we did, and we connect directly with the school district. We take them there, and we've had a long-standing relationship with the school district as well. And it's many people here. It's many people within our organizations, all of us. And it requires a lot of trust also because everybody feels the pressure at different times and we're all under different deadlines. But we always come back to the work. And I think, that is something I really want people to understand is that working in a nonprofit requires a drive and determination that is bigger than yourself. It's bigger than your organization. It's really looking at the community. And so if you keep your eye and your focus on what benefits the community now and in the long run, so you have to, look forward and you have to evaluate your partnerships as well. But as long as you keep your focus on that, you'll have a good career, you'll have a good life. It doesn't, it's not a high paying profession. I didn't get into this because I wanted to make a ton of money. But I feel fulfilled when I go home today. I know I've made a little difference. We hear it all day long, and I don't know another job where you hear that. I mean, I know they exist, but I've never experienced them in this way.
Yeah, it sounds really rewarding and fulfilling. And what I heard also is that within your organization, everybody pitches in being a community liaison in different ways. And so everybody works together, even though they might have their own roles. There's a lot of things that are intertwined. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of at a nice spot. I've worked for larger entities and city government, and I know how complicated it gets when things get really big. And although, we're at 30 people right now and we've grown a lot, we started out very small, 30 people, we can respond and connect with each other and move forward really pretty quickly. So that's also a benefit. But I would never go into the day and say, that's not my job.
Yeah.
That's like no one would ever say that here. Everybody's always willing to do everything. I mean, I remember, 8 years ago at our other center, we had a flood in the basement and our executive director was down there, with the mop and the thing saying, no, you guys have your summer camp and I'll clean up the flooded basement. And that's just kind of how we function here. So
Yeah, and that's so important to know. Like you said, not having a mindset of that's not my job. The mindset is we're all a team when we work together.
yeah.
Yeah, and so I can see where that'd be very important working with each other to know what's going, so everybody knows what's going on and what's needed. And then I would think that that also helps with the networks, with your community partners that you're working with, just to be able to, like you said, meet the needs of the community where they're at and responding to changes, foreseeing those changes that are on the horizon so that you can respond to them hopefully in a way that's not so reactionary, but is more of, meeting the challenge and meeting their needs. Does that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a lot of listening, whether it's to other staff members or to our community. And we do take a lot of pride in the fact that we are, we're as grassroots as it gets. We're on the ground working with people and listening. We provide direct service, but we also are constantly listening and talking about trends and what do we see. And, we connect with St. Vincent to say, well, who's coming in and where are they coming from? Or we just were talking earlier today, like we see a large number of this language group coming up and we weren't really anticipating this. What do we know about them? Where are they coming from? What can we learn? And then collaborating, collectively. And we have, you know, we have cultural brokers, and we're so lucky that we have people from so many different parts of the world that can provide us with a little bit of insight in that. So I don't have to know all the things about everybody all the time. And we trust those folks too. So it's just a lot of give and take and a lot of trust, and, having some history helps too, And also, we don't believe that we know that we're experts on everything that has to do with refugee resettlement. We are refugee education or refugee, advancement. We are just a part of the collective effort to get us there. So we're always open to listening. And that's how we make the changes that we do. Oftentimes, it's somebody will come along, could be a student, could be an intern, could be a family member, and they're like, I've heard about this, or this might work. This is a problem. And then we adjust if we can.
That's great. That's great. Always assessing and evaluating and willing to listen to those voices.
Yeah.
That's just sounds really important, especially with such a community-driven organization.
Yeah, it's important. And it's important that we're responsive to. And that's, something that can be frustrating is, people come in and they have an issue and they have an issue and they have an issue. Some of them are systemic, like housing across the country is a problem. The cost of housing and the quality of housing and access to good housing and fair housing. So RDC can't tackle all of that. We have to rely on our partners, and part of my job is listening to opportunities. Erica does a lot of networking. We just recently collaborated with Allen Neighborhood Center and went in on a housing program where half of the folks that are going to be living in their new housing development are refugees and the other half are going to be American born. And we can do some of that, but that takes years of planning and putting into action before it becomes anything. And that doesn't necessarily help the people coming who are complaining about plumbing or bed bugs, or we just do our best. And that's the reality of it too. We can't fix it all, but you have hope and you have faith and you believe in your partners and you do your best, and that's kind of where you're at every day.
And hopefully most of the families see that. It sounds like they do, because they're sounds like some of them stay involved with you to kind of, like you said, help the newcomers.
We have staff that were students, we have interns that were students with us. Or that's the beautiful thing when people want to get involved in the work that they were a part of in one way or another in the past. And that makes me feel really good. And it could be something as simple. The other day I was kind of having a hard day, and I was driving down this road in a neighborhood on a pretty busy street, and I heard honk, 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 honk. And I'm like, where is this honking coming from? And I looked over, and it was a student I had like 5 or 6 years ago, old enough to drive, just waving at me, like so excited to see. I thought, well, we must have made a positive impact on this student because he's very excited, you know.
Yeah.
But we see a lot of returning people. I had a young man, he brought his wife who had arrived from another country and their little baby for English classes. And, it seems like we're onto something. Something's going right.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like it. They're, reaching out later, and then, like you said, recognizing you and
Yeah.
flagging you down,
Yeah.
years later. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of part of that rewarding aspect of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about, like your career path? You started out in hospitality and things like that. So, can you talk a little bit about, like, what did you start out wanting to do and how did that change along the way?
Sure. When I first went off to school for my bachelor's degree, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I thought I might want to do something related to English or writing or literature. But then I got to school and I took all these classes, and there were so many opportunities. I changed my mind quite a bit. And so I decided, I would go to hospitality because I really wanted to travel and see the world. And I also enjoy people and service. And so at that time, that seemed like the best choice for me. And I was working in hotels already. I started out working at a Red Roof Inn as my first hotel by the University of Ohio State, by their football arena. And that was a wild place to work. And then I decided I wanted to go someplace a little bit more refined and moved to downtown Columbus, Ohio. And that opened up a lot of opportunities for me, and I participated in the sales program, and I liked that as well. And then I moved to Chicago, and I worked in hospitality management there for Marriott downtown, and I worked with international sales. And I did a lot of behind the scenes, but also working with people. And that was very exciting. That was a wonderful place to work. And then September 11th happened. And so my job was working with international travel, and that was no longer. And the country was kind of rebounding from that. So I moved back home to East Lansing and started working at the city of East Lansing. I was fortunate enough to get a job at the Hannah Community Center, and I ended up doing event planning there for years, and I loved that. I wanted to move up north. I worked at a fancy resort up there. I wore many hats, but I was working all the time. And at the end of the day, I just didn't find the value that I needed. I just thought, well, I've made some people money, I've had a couple of parties, but I haven't made a difference in the world. And so this is not, it was kind of a very difficult time for me. I didn't know what to do. So I ended up coming back to East Lansing and volunteering. And I volunteered a few different places. I did a little soul searching. And so I thought, well, I'd like to work with international folks. I care about the community. I care about the world. I volunteered at a migrant camp. I volunteered at a school teaching English, and then I volunteered at the RDC, and that was it. I knew that's what I wanted to do. It was a much smaller organization at the time. That was about 2007. But it motivated me to study for the GRE and go talk to the folks at MSU in the TESOL program. And there was one professor over there who was very straightforward, but also very encouraging, and said, I was hesitant because of my age and my experience, my previous experience. And she said, if this is what you want to do, you have, great references and recommendations, because I kept those. Anytime I got a letter saying, thank you for your work on this, I kept it. And I also, when I applied for school, I asked people for references and recommendations. And I did not, if I had worked with that person, I asked them, and I just decided this is my time, and they can say no, and it's fine. Maybe that's the sales background that I have, but I was okay with getting a no every once in a while. But everybody was actually very kind. I don't think I got one no. Everybody said yes. So I had the mayor of East Lansing gave me a recommendation. I had, Denny Hoopengarner, who works for MSU now. He wrote me a letter of recommendation. I had a good package to deliver to the university to go to for my master's, even though it was a very different field. And I started my career there, and I loved it, and then I taught at the university, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was in over my head. Oh, we have another phone in the background, but that was kind of my career change.
Wow, it's a really cool story though, the, different angles that you took, and just the different experiences, and then there's things that happen outside that are unforeseen, like you said, 9/11 happened, and that can often change a career trajectory like it did with you. But it sounds like it ended up in a really great place because of where you're at.
I'm so happy, and I'm glad I did the soul searching, and I'm glad that I didn't stop exploring what was really important to me, because I went it was 180. I went from feeling so at the end of the day so empty and exhausted to now I might still be exhausted, but I feel like my heart it beats with enthusiasm for it. It sounds ridiculous, but it really does for the work that we do here.
Yeah, you can think about all the positive things that you saw
Yeah.
in the day, and I'm sure it's not all positive. I'm sure there's some things, some struggles that you see, and obstacles that you face along the way, but just being able to balance the positives with the struggles, I'm sure is,
Yeah, I think
yeah.
you can't be afraid of the stories you might hear that will make you feel sad or make you feel frustrated. I usually think of it in terms of I'm doing what I can in this world to make a difference for the people around me, because that's the world I want to live in. And I see it. We have people who get their citizenship, and the whole people from all different classes who have never met each other are so excited. And we see moms holding babies of moms from different parts of the world that speak different languages, but they understand what that means to hold a baby and to care for a baby. We have teachers who will take care, they've got a toddler in one hand and they're writing on the board with the other. All of that's happening here. And people coming in and making friends, and they don't even know how to say anything to each other. They're just happy that they both showed up for English class. That's the world I want to live in, and it exists. It exists here. So what an awesome thing to see. I can be there for people when they're having a difficult time, because we are all there for each other.
Yeah. It sounds like it just really fires fires your passion and compassion for what you're doing and for the people that you get to work with every day.
Absolutely. And, I get inspiration from so many people, whether it's our students or their families or the kids. Most recently, we had this young man from MSU. He was a volunteer last year as part of a course requirement. And, last spring semester was really hard. And he, muddled through it. And then he reached out to us again this year. And I didn't realize the person who it was. I'm not the volunteer coordinator, but he signed up for 5 shifts. And my coworker was like, "Do you think this is legitimate?" And I said, I'm not sure it's a lot of time. He came in and he said, "No, I want to do all of it again." And he, his background, his educational background is not anywhere near direct human service. It's business and sales, but yet he has found this to be so important to him that he's coming so often. And that also provides me with hope.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome story.
Yeah.
So getting back to my questions, because you've been answering them really great. I love the stories that go along with them. It just gives so much information. What advice do you have for students who might be interested in pursuing a similar career, like with community outreach or the nonprofit world? Because we do often get students who want to start their own nonprofit or become
Yeah.
involved in a nonprofit.
I would say volunteer with, different nonprofits and kind of get an idea of how they're running. Have conversations with people. I bought so many people coffee and sat down and asked them questions and, listened to their stories and their paths. Don't be afraid to jump in. You're not going to know it all. But I would definitely say, a young lady bought me coffee not too long ago, and she was asking questions, and she said, "I really want to get into management, nonprofit management. I just graduated with a management degree, but nobody is biting on my application." And that's because we really do need people to kind of start out with experience in nonprofit work. It's not the same as a small business or corporate. So, get your feet wet as a volunteer and let people know that's your interest. Internships are a good way too. Yeah, that would be my suggestion. Don't be afraid, ask questions, investigate. Don't take anything personally. Everybody that I know who works for a nonprofit is overextended and appreciates a reminder. So if anybody, if you reach out to somebody and they don't respond, don't think it has anything to do with you. Just reach out again. Give them time, but reach out again.
That was such great advice too, and I think it connects with networking too, which I usually ask my interviewees about. But a lot of what you are been talking about has to do with networking as well as just making connections that are potential for your career, kind of all the same. Do you have, are there like either local or statewide organizations that you suggest people get involved with, or even like any clubs that you know of on MSU's campus? You may or may not know of any, but do you recommend anything like that?
Sure. There's, United Way has quite a big reach within the community in terms of the work that they do. Also, there is the Nonprofit Association, which is located in Lansing, but they do a lot of work with different organizations, and that would be a good place to kind of get your feet wet. There's also the Power of We, and a lot of us overlap. So, I'm thinking of, because you're MSU students, like CapCan, for example, they work with helping students enroll in college and fill out their FAFSA and, feeling motivated to and feel like there's a pathway for them. And that's a great way. If you're part of like the Latino Hispanic community on campus, then there's going to be some overlap in the community. And you can ask your leaders about that. How do I get involved? And they will often say, talk to Krista Ray or talk to RDC, and we all talk to each other. That's the other thing, is it's really a small town. Lansing and East Lansing, it can feel very big, but when you start getting into nonprofit or whatever your niche is, whatever it is, and you start making those connections, if you say that you're interested in something, people really do want to help, and they'll give you some direction and some pointers. You just have to let us know, what you're interested in. And I think for networking, that is crucial. And I would also say, don't underplay your experience volunteering. If you are a volunteer at an organization, put that down. And if you don't have a lot of background as an employee, you can count some of that as your skills and your skill set, because some of your volunteer opportunities are pretty important. And also, if you're leaving an organization and you've had a good relationship with them and you are going to put it on your resume, you should ask the people who are working there, how would you describe this on a resume? Because what I often see is young people undersell themselves, or they use kind of blanket statements, when really we would interpret that a different way if I were putting it on my resume. So ask for that help in networking settings, and then also when you're working as a staff or a volunteer.
That is a great suggestion, because quite often when college students and professionals are working on their resume and they're listing their skills from different experiences or their responsibilities that they have, quite often it's easy to overlook some of the background things that you learn about, like, the structure of an organization and how it works, and, of a nonprofit in the nonprofit world. But then, like you mentioned, just some of the background things that you have to learn along the way that you might not think of
Yeah,
normally to put on
yeah,
a resume, but they're really important. And those things can really contribute to future positions.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, you've said so many really great things that are, I think, important for our students to learn. I'm so glad to have you on here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. We've had a great partnership over the years, and we've enjoyed having your students in our program. So thank you very much.
Yeah. My last question is it okay if students contact you if they have any questions about, getting started in a nonprofit or any of the things that you've done, and
Absolutely.
RDC itself?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. I'm happy to talk with a student or give them a tour or share emails or ideas. I'm happy to be a liaison for them.
All right, that's awesome. I'll include your email address in the description that I'll have
Thank you.
in this episode.
Yeah,
All
absolutely.
right,
All right.
great.
Thank you so much. I
You're
apologize about the phone, but this has been wonderful.
That's okay. I mean, sometimes, in this type of environment, we have to know that, life is around us.
Yeah.
And so it
Yes, it's
happens.
definitely happening. So
Yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I just really appreciate the information and the wealth of knowledge that you brought to this interview that I know it's going to benefit our students. And just thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you so much. All right. Take care. Thank
You
you.
too. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the HDFS Career Podcast. I hope you enjoyed meeting Mariah and listening to all the wealth of information and knowledge that she shared with us today about her career, about her organization, about the community that she works with. She just provided so much information that I hope that excited you and opened up some possibilities for you as you think about your future and your career. Um, as mentioned at the end of the episode, if you want to contact Mariah to ask her any questions about nonprofit work or the organization that she's with, if you want to connect with the Refugee Development Center, feel free to reach out to her. Her email address will be in the show description. Please join me again soon for interviews with other professionals to learn about all the options that you have available to you as you continue pursuing this degree. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day.